Over to you. Sorry, Euan, I think I've muted you. You might have to unmute yourself.
Okay. Hey, that's me now.
That's it. We can hear your lovely voice. Go for it, Euan.
Thank you, Lisa. Good morning, everybody. Today's masterclass, as you can see from the slide, is about biodiversity. What I hope to do during this is to cover the area of biodiversity and the criteria of the Green Check portal that some of the members struggle with when they're going through. So hopefully the beginning's maybe a bit, you may think it's a bit long-winded, but stick with it. It does make sense, and it'll all come together as we go through the webinar. I'll just go on it. Oh, it's not letting me do it. There you go. Right, the first slide. And during the programme, we'll go through what is biodiversity, how relevant is it to my business, and how can I help improve biodiversity through my business. And at the end, we'll have, as Lisa already said, we'll have a question and answer session to kind of answer any questions or queries that you have. Right, what is biodiversity? Biodiversity is defined as the variety and variability of life on Earth. It's a measure of the variation at genetic, species, and ecosystem levels. Variation within these three categories is the basis of evolution. The more diverse the gene pool, the fitter the species. The more variation within the species, the easier it can adapt to habitats. In the slide here, there is an example of variation emanating from one species. The Hawaiian honeycreeper is a good example of what Darwin and Alfred Russel Wallace found in the Galapagos and Borneo, respectively. Islands being a kind of microcosm of the Earth. If you have a founder species that evolves through genetic mutations to fit available habitats. As you can see here, the founder species, quite a straight beak. All the ones that emanated from that founder species adapted to have different shapes of beak to accommodate different food sources on the island. One can eat, one specialised in insects, one in seeds and insect and bird eggs, other ones nectar, or some of them nectar and insects. It's all part of the kind of biodiversity variation that we're trying to look at. Connectivity of nature. Nature is a web in which everything is connected, and the loss or the reduction of habitat or species affects this connectivity and diminishes the gene pool, the natural world, and in turn can influence human existence and biodiversity. In this slide, we can see a much used example of connectivity in nature. In Yellowstone National Park in the 1920s, the grey wolf at the top there was exterminated. However, by taking out the top predator in the system, it triggered what they call a trophic cascade. This meant that elk populations exploded, which led to overgrazing, loss of young trees. This in turn led to a crash in beaver populations, which led to straightening and speeding of river courses. The loss of riverside trees through overgrazing caused a decline in salmon numbers, small birds and amphibians due to the lack of shade and insect populations. The lack of carrion left over from wolf kills led to a decline in bear, eagle and raven populations, which led again to an explosion in coyote numbers, which led to a decline in pronghorn antelope and rodent numbers, which led to a decline in red fox numbers. So by removing one species, it changed the habitat, the dominant species, and led to a decline of many others. With the reintroduction of the grey wolf back into Yellowstone in the mid-90s, this has led to a reversal of all these negative effects. Now, these types of projects are happening all over the world to restore trophic levels. Bison in Europe and in England now, buffalo in North America, beavers in UK, and sea eagles. I was actually lucky enough to see a seagull at the weekend, getting harassed by local gulls up in Wester Ross. Good day. In India is in the process right now of reintroducing cheetahs. You've maybe seen that in the press last week. These may seem a long way from your business, but it helps to demonstrate that nature is connected on many levels and forms systems that can be easily interrupted or degraded by the loss of just one species. What can I do in my business to help relieve pressure on biodiversity? Loss of biodiversity is a global problem, but your actions can make a difference both in your area and through carefully researched procurement can also help in a wider context. By careful examination of what you have within your business and what you use to run your business will demonstrate the importance of protecting biodiversity and natural capital. Deciding to review your procurement and looking at what can be done at and around your premises to bolster biodiversity are the first steps. The biodiversity may be more important to your business than you realise. The United Nations Environment Programme Financing Initiative found that 13 of the 18 sectors that comprised of the Financial Times Share Index 100, representing $1.6 trillion in market capitalization, are associated with the production processes with high or very high material dependence on nature. According to the World Economic Forum, more than half of the global domestic product depends on nature. It could be easily assumed that biodiversity risks are confined to heavily impacted sectors such as mining, forestry, and agriculture. However, many companies likely rely on natural capital and in this can impact them in some way. Therefore, businesses should consider including biodiversity and natural capital into their mainstream risk register. Two approaches to reducing the impact of your business has on biodiversity. The first one is procurement. We're probably all familiar with procurement. Reassess your current procurement methods. If you do not have a formal procurement policy, establish one, even if it's a simple A4, just spell out what you're wanting to do. Make sure that when reassessing or establishing a procurement policy that you take into consideration the origin of the products and produce and the methods used to grow, process and transport them. The products and produce you use within your business can have a massive impact on biodiversity both at home and abroad. Many ingredients and products such as palm oil, sugar, plastics, and digital electronics are significant contributors to both habitat loss and pollution. In the slide here, it's a good slide for thank the WWF for this one. In this slide here, we can see the UK land's footprint overseas in hectares for 7 commodities superimposed on the UK map for comparison. The amount of palm oil grown worldwide for eventual consumption in the UK is the same as the landmass of Northern Ireland. All of Wales would be soya, and the southeast of England, from the Wash to the Isle of Wight, would be covered in beef and leather production. And nearly 8 million hectares worldwide is used for timber to supply the UK market. If where possible, ensure that any product or produce you purchase are sustainably, responsibly and ethically produced. A quick way to do this is to look for certification from organisations such as Marine Stewardship Council, the Forestry Stewardship Council, Rainforest Alliance, RSPCA Assured, the Roundtable on Sustainable Palm Oil, ProTerra, and the Roundtable for Responsible Soya. They all not only run accreditation certifications, but also provide a wealth of information on the various products on their websites. There are also apps. There's apps for everything nowadays. There are also apps such as Palm Oil Scan, Good Fish Guide, and The Seasons, which can help you make decisions on how, what, and where to buy sustainable produce for your business. And it's worth remembering that not all sustainable producers will be members of certification schemes, and that many small local businesses offer a fantastic range of products that are ethical, sustainable, and responsibly produced. So shop around, basically, have a look, really research what you're buying, basically, is what the message is from here, and get it down on paper, if possible. The second approach to reducing the impact of your business having biodiversity is direct action. The kind of four kind of pillars of this are provide, enhance, diversifying existing habitats in and around your premises, encourage and sustain flora and fauna in and around your premises, get involved in local, national projects and campaigns that benefit nature and enhance biodiversity. Finally, try to educate your customers and visitors to the value and benefits of being more ecologically aware. Things to consider to help biodiversity at your premises. Plant native where possible. Consider light and noise pollution. Support local conservation efforts. Support any existing species that you have. Provide and protect existing ones. Provide habitats and protect existing ones, sorry. Maintain gardens and grounds with a focus on biodiversity, and try to limit the use of chemicals, whether fertilizers, pesticides, or herbicides. Now, direct action takes many guises. Here we have in the slide, we see a nest box providing nesting opportunities. Butterflies, little peacock butterfly on a bit of lavender there, is providing a food source. A log pile providing shelter, and planters and shrubs and flowers providing both. And finally, the most impressive bug hotel I've seen, and this is at one of our green tourism members, the Roman Army Museum in the Borders. Very impressive bug hotel, best one I've seen. Things to consider to help biodiversity on your premises. As we've said, by providing shelter, food, and nesting places, you will encourage wildlife. Now, this can be done easily by the use of following: nesting boxes for birds and mammals, feeding and watering stations for wildlife, planting for wildlife. Okay, and now look at these in a bit more depth. There are a multitude nesting boxes. There are a multitude of varieties of nesting box available. We see here open-fronted ones for robins and wagtails, blue and great tip boxes, house martin and swallow cups, house sparrow terraces, and swift boxes, and a swift collar. The swifts are in serious decline in the UK, and there are many groups around the country involved in schemes to try and reverse this downward trend in their numbers. I'm reminiscing here, but I can remember when I was young playing in the back garden and the evening sky was filled with the sound of screaming swifts. I've lived all over the UK in various places around the world. 55 years on, by chance, I'm living in the same street where I grew up. And when I go out in the back garden after tea in the summer, silence. So this is mostly down to loss of nesting places. Swifts tend to nest in traditional places, but when these are not available, they will use boxes. But if you use the collars, which are little MP3 players, cost £10–20 off eBay or off the internet, there is a 60–65% better chance that they get occupied And the Queen's University in Belfast doing a lot of work with this, and they're pretty good. But you get MP3 players, CDs, or even memory sticks. We Swift call on them, and they all help to bring them in and use the boxes, make them a bit more successful. Not only small birds. If you have the space, large birds, such as owls, kestrels, can also benefit. You see in the slide here, a kestrel box, also tawny, barn, and little owl boxes. And if you've really got a bit of space, an osprey platform. I remember, reminiscing again, I can remember having lunch with my family in a hotel overlooking Loch Tummel in Perthshire, watching ospreys bringing in lunch for their offspring to a nest built on a platform on the other side of the loch. So it can be done. In urban settings, going back to trophic levels again, not only can erecting owl and kestrel boxes help bolster their numbers, but it can also help towards reducing any rodent problems often found in towns and cities. It's not just feather flyers that benefit from nesting boxes. Bats also use boxes quite readily. In the slide, we can see kind of standard bird on the left-hand side, standard bat boxes, some fancy designer ones, and also a roost box or hibernaculum as well. These are slightly bigger. Also, when considering if you're doing a new build or extensions, there are many construction materials available nowadays that are specifically made for roosting bats, as you can see from the tiles and the specialised brick for roosting bats. So there is plenty of options out there to help them out. Again, it's not flying mammals that benefit from a helping hand to find nesting and bedding down places. Here we have in the top row some examples of dormouse boxes. One of our green tourism members who operates a 5-star luxury treehouse accommodation in the Wye Valley is fortunate to have a wildflower meadow and a hazel coppice on his property, and has put up a lot of dormouse boxes with great success. Of course, dormouse are not found all over the UK, but one larger mammal who 30 years ago was only found in a few places in northwest Scotland is now making an appearance all over the country. And speaking, of course, of pine martens, and the box on the bottom of the slide is used by one of them. Pine martens are being encouraged via erecting boxes like this in the northeast of Scotland and in Ulster to help protect the native red squirrels from the introduced grey squirrels. Pine martens showing a preference for the larger, slower greys for an easier, less energy expending meal. As if why chase a nimble red squirrel through the branches when you can eat a big fat grey on the ground, as they say. Not on this slide, but establishing a few hedgehog boxes is also good practice. When you're around your site, is also good practice. Excellent. Again, as I mentioned, not only nesting places that you can use to help bolster biodiversity, but providing a constant food source you can bolster numbers through and therefore their survival rate. Again, there are a plethora of types of bird feeder available. There are even books on which are the best ones. Here we have a selection of store-bought ones, some homemade ones, and a big mega feeder if you're prone to forget to fill them up. Again, there are an enormous variety of feeders. Some more examples here show what you can provide for food for birds that may come into your premises, such as fat balls, apples, seeds, and dried insects. The feeder on the right has a tree underneath to catch any spillage where vermin may be a problem. It's not only food you can put in these, but in the springtime, nesting materials. The one on the bottom left is a store-bought one with alpaca wool in it. The top two are homemade, upcycled ones. You can fill them with moss, straw, sheep's wool, dog hair, all great for lining nests. Once again, not only limited to bird feeders, there are many feeders that you can use to attract mammals. The middle photograph is from a green tourism member garden in Pitlochry. Unfortunately, in the top right and left-hand photos, Your feeders sometimes will get trashed by other wildlife, but persevere with them. Not only will it bring interesting wildlife closer to your guests and visitors, but will also help bolster wildlife populations in your area. Planting for biodiversity. Planting for biodiversity can take many routes, from large-scale tree and hedge planting to small tubs, planters, and hanging baskets, if space is limited. This can involve the planting of shelter belts, berry-bearing shrubs, and pollinating flowers. With these actions, you're helping to provide shelter and sources of food. Without pollinating flowers, insects would die off. Without insects to pollinate, the human food supplies are threatened. Research has shown that there has been a 75% decline in the European insect biomass in the last 20 years. This is of concern, as about 2/3 of the world's crop plant species rely on animal pollination, and bees, butterflies, and beetles, not easy to say, and all the other species that help plants go through their life cycles and ensure that we continue to eat. I've heard insects described as ecological glue, which is a pretty good description. Where insect populations have crashed in the recent past, such as the Central Valley in California, in some areas of China, it's taken a vast amount of effort and money to artificially pollinate crops, which before the insects were doing for free. So by planting where you can, you're helping to hold systems together. There are a few national schemes worth having a look at, such as the All Ireland Pollination Plan, that is looking to provide corridors of pollinating plants the length and breadth of Ireland. And in the UK, Pollinator Monitoring Scheme, which records the insect pollinators population, again, not easy to say, across the country. On the slide here, we see some examples of planting: green walls, tree planting, herb gardens, and an urban bicycle shelter with a green roof and built-in bug hotel and nesting boxes. This in itself covers a lot of bases in the criteria and also stops your bike getting nicked. It's not only rural areas that can play a part in providing plants for pollinators. Urban areas where space is sometimes limited can also achieve this by the use of baskets, planters, boxes, and herb gardens. These could be situated at the entrance of your premises, on balconies, patios, decking, courtyards, and rooftops. It's not only making your premises look and smell pleasant, but it's also of great benefit to insects. All this talk of pollinating insects leads us on to honeybees. There is a growing movement, both rural and urban hospitality and other businesses, of keeping honeybees in beehives. All the 250 species of bees found in the UK are under growing pressure from climate change, pesticide use, loss of traditional wildflower areas, the aura mite, and invasive new species such as the Asian hornet. Although the honeybees are not going to go extinct, they are under stress. So any help you can give them is fantastic. There are beekeeping clubs and associations in every town and city in the country, and your local one can be found with a quick Google search. Establishing hives on your premises helps bolster their numbers, makes for good PR and social media stories, and you get a healthy organic product to sell. Now, this is a worldwide movement, as you can see from the examples on the slide of hotels, such as St. Ermind's Hotel in London, the Clift Hotel in San Francisco, the Malden Hotel in Belfast, and the Mandarin Hotel in Paris. The French seem to do everything with a bit more style and panache. I bet even the bees have got hats on. Maintenance for biodiversity. Again, this is in the criteria and involves making sure any actions that you undertake within your grounds or gardens, if your business has them, benefits or at least doesn't harm or degrade biodiversity. This includes looking at mowing regimes, trying to establish different heights of sward, this providing a variety of feeding areas for feeding and for shelter. Try not to cut the grass too early in the season. If you are trying to establish more wildflowers on the lawn, remove any grass clippings to help lower the lawn's fertility. In other ground maintenance activities, there is a legal requirement not to cut trees or hedges during the nesting season. Try to take any ground or garden maintenance with a minimum disturbance to wildlife. With any organic waste, hedge trimmings, grass clippings, etc., try to establish a compost heap on site. If you're concerned about attracting vermin or simply don't have the space, there are lots of hot box and tumbler type compost bins that are vermin proof, take up next to no space, and you can also use them to deal with food waste. They also turn waste into usable compost a lot quicker than a traditional compost bin. Any wind-blown or cut branches used for log piles. Try to retain any wet areas, and if you must clean out ponds, if you have one, do it in autumn, and try to cut back invasive non-native species at the same time. And most of us have heard of no mow May. This is where we're asked to refrain from cutting our lawns too early in the season, and by this allowing emerging pollinating insects access to a nectar source from early flowering plants within the lawn. Bird's foot trefoil, dandelions, clover, and self-heal are all fantastic for early pollinators. Consider what you're looking for in a lawn. The left-hand photograph on the slide, you can see a neatly clipped lawn, which would probably contain maybe one species of grass and maybe the odd daisy. It's basically a monoculture. You can see from the other photographs where wildflower meadows have been created, not only in a large area, but in a relatively small garden. Here, there must be possibly 30-odd species of grasses and wildflower, and in my biased opinion, a much prettier and very Monet-esque, if that's a word, scene with huge benefits for pollinating insects. If you do decide to establish a wildflower meadow or area, be careful where you buy your wildflower seed. Check that the seeds have not been imported from abroad, and that they are the seeds of flowers that are found within the area that you're going to sow them. Most reputable seed suppliers will have mixes for your specific area and habitat. When establishing a wildflower meadow on existing grassland, try to plant or sow a large proportion of yellow rattle. This is a partially parasitic on grass and will help change the makeup of the lawn to favour wildflowers. Biodiversity in urban areas. As mentioned previously, the promotion of biodiversity is not just limited to rural areas. Here we can see examples that are often found in urban areas and some that are beginning to make towns and cities their home. Hedgehogs, probably doing better in urban settings of parks and suburban gardens and allotments than their country cousins. Foxes are also faring well in urban settings. Deer, badgers are also seen more and more often in towns and cities. Although I don't know how amused Mr. and Mrs. Pill will be with their new neighbours. The three photographs on the left of the slide represent relatively newcomers to the urban scene. The photograph on the far left is of the otter taken with a trail camera below a city centre hotel under which a mill stream runs. The hotel being a converted 15th century flour mill. Here, a female and two well-grown cubs hunted almost every night. Actually, I took this picture. I kind of cheated by putting a bit of fish up there to get a better picture, but it kind of worked. The fuzzy photograph next to it of the pine marten was taken just a couple of weeks ago by the Royal Zoological Society that was doing a survey on hedgehogs in southwest London just a couple of weeks ago. This is the first sighting of a pine marten in London for well over 100 years. And finally, the top left-hand picture photograph is of a beaver, which had been introduced in many river systems all over the UK, and which are now resident and seen often on the river that flows through the city centre of Perth in Scotland. Not just about big, cute, furry mammals, but the opportunity, as previously mentioned, to provide and conserve flora in urban areas is also a great way to bolster biodiversity. We can see here in the slides different ways to do this. Somebody has created a small wildflower meadow in a planter, giving a source of nectar and a splash of colour to a very urban area. Also in the centre photograph, we can see the use of green walls to break up and soften bare concrete and brick. This is known as biophilic design and is increasingly used in urban architecture. And it's not only good for biodiversity, but provides health and economic benefits and a feeling of connectivity to the natural world, to the human occupants as well. Although considered a fairly new concept, it can be traced back to the 6th century and the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. In the photograph above, Buddleia, although not native, is a huge draw for pollinating insects. Planting just one or two of these in pots is a quick fix for attracting pollinators to any patio, courtyard, or planter. Sedum roofs and green roofs, like the one seen in the bicycle centre in the previous slide, are a fantastic way not only to increase biodiversity in your premises, but also to slow down water runoff, and it can help insulate. I was reading this in The Guardian just last night that there are plans to introduce 1,000 bee bus stops as bus stops with green roofs in the UK, with Leicester leading the way with 30 installed since 2021. Derby, Southampton, Newcastle, Oxford and Glasgow are all following suit and installing these green bus stops. The photograph of the brick wall, I kind of put this in to demonstrate how wildlife can grow in the most urban places. This maidenhair springwort seen here is taking advantage of the lime in the mortar between the brickwork. Another example of this can be seen in the bottom right-hand slide or right-hand corner of the slide. This is a liverwort called Mercanthia polymorpha. This tiny plant you'll sometimes find grown in the compost of plants that you could buy from your garden centres. It will be more often seen grown in cracks in the pavement. It looks fairly insignificant, but it's a colonising blanket forming plant that again demonstrates that nature, given the chance, will grow and spread. This little liverwort can absorb trace heavy metals from soils, which makes it an invaluable natural solution for cleaning up contaminated land. As a kind of by the way, when I was at university, I had to write a 3,000-word essay on the sex life of Mercanthia polymorpha. Believe it or not, it wasn't that exciting. Moving on. Biodiversity education and promotion. Education is fundamental to improving awareness of and on ecological and environmental issues concerning biodiversity. This can be achieved by using art, books, maps, and displays, and verbally talking to customers about what they might see in your area and how they can help. We can see this on the slide, examples of children's books, spotters' guides, interpretation boards and maps. Map of Tobermory Bay, lovely. The more information you give visitors and customers, the more they will become engaged in what you're trying to do in your efforts to increase and protect biodiversity. However, if you feel that you cannot undertake any practical actions to help biodiversity at your premises, then you can promote and support national conservation groups and local wildlife trusts. The national ones could include RSPB, BugLife, the Woodland Trust, Trees for Life, World Wildlife Fund, and Plant Life. There are also many regional wildlife trusts that operate around the country and do excellent work. You can support and promote these organisations in a number of ways, by monetary contributions, volunteering, or by making visitors and customers aware of the work that they're doing both in your area and worldwide. Ulster Wildlife Trust is currently undertaking a hedgehog monitoring programme and is looking for help with that for volunteers at the moment. Lastly, monitoring and recording biodiversity. This one kind of trips up a lot of people on the criteria. But with the upsurge in citizen science during lockdowns over the last few years, has never been easier to record biodiversity. There are a multitude of surveys, wildlife surveys and apps that you can use to record flora, fauna in and around your business. If you have a large garden or grounds, consider having an ecological survey done. This will give you a baseline to gauge if any habitat maintenance or improvements that you're making are making a difference. Try to involve guests and customers, especially kids. Encourage them and supply materials and equipment such as notepads, pencils, binoculars for them to observe and record any wildlife they encounter. If you have a pond, have pond dipping equipment that you can give out to kids. Keeps them amused for hours. Let's the parents enjoy themselves. Summing up, protecting, conserving, enhancing and promoting biodiversity may not seem that relevant to the day-to-day running of your business. However, I hope that what I have endeavoured to demonstrate today is that it is important to all of us, whether it's in supply lines or as an attraction for visitors or contributing to a bank of data, or just for mindfulness, the sheer pleasure taken from seeing wildlife in all its forms. And that. Thank you for your time today. If you have any questions that you want to ask, then please put them in now.
Hey, there's a question in the chat. Jennifer wants to know if there's a company that you recommend that offers ecological surveys.
There are many. I mean, there are many consultancies everywhere in the country. It's hard to recommend one, to be honest, because they're all quite good. You find a lot of them are round about universities kind of thing. If you look kind of around universities and that, there's usually environmental consultancy people round about there. But I couldn't really say definitely which is a good one, which is a bad one. But there's many out there. Just I say a quick Google search, you'll find them. But even if you apply to your local, inquire to your local university, they'll probably be able to put you in touch with someone.
Brilliant, thank you. Does anybody else have any other questions? You'll need to unmute yourself. I can see you've got your hand up, Derek. If you want to just unmute yourself, you should be able to ask a question.
Hi there. I'm interested in allowing or enabling guests to record wildlife sightings and maybe location, as well as taking a photograph and maybe posting it somehow. I was just wondering whether anybody else on the call has experience of using some system, and because I mean I'm reasonably techy, but I'm not. I was just wondering if there's anything really user friendly out there that's quite simple and would allow you to go, oh look, squirrel, and take a photo and post it, and other guests can maybe see it, or whether simply some sort of blog or whatever. But yeah, anyone with any experience would be interested.
There are a lot of apps nowadays, like iNaturalist and things like that. They're pretty good, both for identification and for recording sightings and that. As I say, if you go on the Google, whatever it's called, I'm not very techy myself, the Google Play app thing, they're all listed in that. If you put in iNaturalist or
No, I took a note.
I
took a note of those, and well, I guess we might get sent the slides too. I think that's what you said. But yeah, yes. Okay. If they're, certainly if they're bespoke and for that kind of thing, then I'll certainly give them a shot. I was just wondering if anybody had any experience of anything that might be maybe simpler. I don't know.
Some of our members I know from the years I've worked with that are a similar style of business to yourself, Derek, actually have bought like just a bog standard notebook and call it a nature diary, and actively encourage guests to note what they've seen, the dates. I've seen some fantastic examples where people have found stuff on the ground that they've then put in and pressed into the book. I've seen pictures of nature diaries where children have drawn what they've seen, and the parents have written underneath what it looks like, because it's not always easy to identify. But simple things like that as well work quite well when it's cottages or bed and breakfast or smaller businesses. A nice wee nature diary for people to record what they've seen, or a spotter sheet. Is it the Woodland Trust? They've got a brilliant thing if you get lots of family called Nature Detectives, and they've got almost like little sheets for families where the kids can go around local places and parks and identify when they've found a particular type of leaf or a particular type of bug or bird hotel, these kind of things. They're really good as well. It's the Nature Detectives. I'm sure it's the Woodland Trust that has those kind of things that are really good and useful as well.
We've got a lot of members that use trail cameras nowadays, and kind of beam them onto the kind of a television in the lounge or whatever. It's amazing, but even during the day, what's about, and if you find one near a bird table or a feed station or something like that.
But even if you're good in social media, I've seen some places encourage guests to post on social media pictures that they've seen when they've stayed with you. It's not my area of expertise, so I'm not going to comment on hashtags, but it's quite good and people love, it's quite good for increasing your following on social media, because people love pictures of animals and wildlife.
Yeah, thanks.
Does anybody else have any questions they'd like to ask? Yes, how can we help?
Hi, so I'm from the Scottish Chronic Centre. One of the biggest problems that we have is funding for these sort of things, and I was wondering if you had any idea of anywhere you could go to sort of get some sort of, like, even if it's just starting funding to sort of like buy the boxes for squirrels and birds, or if it's something that, you know, maybe you need to look into it a bit more.
I mean, the lottery fund's always worth a kind of try. You know, it's got quite a lot of money, of our money, kind of thing, like the recycle.
Mm-hmm.
I've also seen a lot of bird boxes and houses made out of upcycled materials, so old pallets. And if you get someone that's a little bit handy with wood that can build a box that shapes one that springs, it's one of the distilleries, I think Blair Athol, one of their volunteers for the grounds, he made them out of pallets and old bicycle tires to water. And they're really simple. It's just almost like a rectangle design with a big hole so that they can nest in. And they've had quite a few actually species that have started to nest in those boxes as well. So if you've got someone that's quite clever, as Euan mentioned in the slides, things like even just log piles in areas can encourage habitats of species, or more often than not, bug hotels are actually all upcycled materials. So spare bricks, bits of woods, I've seen bits of plastic tubing that's been integrated into them because it's quite sturdy for weather depending on, I mean, you're in Scotland, so you'll be like us, it rains a lot, you need to make sure that it'll withstand the test of weather. But a lot of things can also be upcycled. If you look at the RSPB website, they've got information about giving nature a home and how to kind of use materials that you may have lying about that's quite useful as well.
Yeah, well, we're going to have quite a lot of excess wood on the sly in the next couple of months, so that's absolutely fantastic. Thank you.
No problem. Anybody else have any questions for us? No, then that's great. All that's left to say thank you very much for joining us this morning. We hope you find it useful. We will be emailing out a copy of the slides, and we'll also send out a copy of the recording as well, in case you want to watch anything back, press pause, read over any of the slides or the information as well. But that's grand, thank you, and I hope you'll have a great rest of the week.
Thanks very much.